Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvadha. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavaihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Team Param Vedanta welcomes you all for the session 14 of Kathopanishad. We have completed the verses from 6 to 12 of the third Vali. Today, we will take up the mantras from 13 to 17 of third Vali for our study, and the same will be explained by Dr. Sanjay Banakal, Srimati Mamata Shankar, Srimati Vidya Prabhu, Srimati Rama Gopalakrishna, and Srimati Nelima. As always, Dr. Hegde sir will give us the deeper thoughts. Now it's time to listen to Mr. Ullas, who will briefly revisit the mantras we have studied it last week before we go for the introduction of today's class. Over to you, Mr. Ullas, sir.
Thank you. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So from where we started or dropped in the last week, let's start from there and reimagine that chariot in which all the horses are unruly. There's just one horse wants to go on the other side, the other one wants to go on the other side, irrespective of whatever the passenger wants or even the driver wants. And my reins are all tattered, by which I cannot really control them. They're just going to break anytime. And if you want to imagine, even the driver is kind of drunk. Now, can we really imagine where that chariot is ever going to go? Is it ever going to reach its destination? More than anything else, perhaps the driver doesn't even know where the destination is. So we need to see, and this is a depiction of many of us. Like this chariot is our body, these horses are our sense organs, those reins are our mind, which is very important that has to be very strong. So that the driver is also in control, so that wherever the passenger wants to go, he can take it there. So we need to see whether these sense organs that we have, these horses, are our friends or are our enemies. If they are in our control, then they are our friends, or else they are our worst enemies. So this intellect, this driver is the one, then he would know what is my primary goal. It's always moksha. For people like us, the Tivra Mumukshus, the primary goal is moksha. And then there are other so many activities that we would do in our life. Those are kind of secondary goals. But again, all those secondary goals should ultimately aid us for our primary goal. And those activities should only help us to gain or make our sadhan chatushtaya sampatti stronger and stronger. That is the only way in which the intellect can understand where the goal is, where the target is. And that way we need to see how we can cultivate our mind. So in the next slide, we see we had gone through verses from 6 to 12 in the last class, and it says yastu vijnanvan bhavati. Vijnanvan, that intelligent person, that cultivated mind, they are focused on the destination. The best way to do that is the company that we keep. When we are in satsanga, whenever we are hanging around with the like-minded people or the people who are into spiritual studies and all, then sooner or later it will rub on to us. So satsang is very important. So anyways, the intelligent people are focused on the destination. Unintelligent people, either they don't know or they have forgotten about it. They become hijacked by the emotions, and then they are not making the right decisions by the mind or by the right intellect. They are only driven by emotions. And then the sense organs take over. If you have those emotions under check, then the sense organs will sooner or later come under check and they'll automatically be under control. In the next verse, he talks about if you see, there is like a contrast in the two verses. In the second line, first word of the two verses, we see na sat tat padam apnoti, and second one it says satu tat padam apnoti. In the first one, it says na sat tat, na sat tat padam apnoti. He doesn't get that tat padam. But in the second one, it says satu tat padam apnoti. He does get that highest goal. Who? In the seventh one, he talks about yastu avijnanavan bhavati. Ukar and akar becomes vakar in the sandhi. So that is yastu avijnanavan bhavati. He doesn't get, who is not knowledgeable. He doesn't get that paramapada. What he gets is only sansar cha adigachati. In the next slide, we'll see that the second one, who is intelligent person, he is the one who is going to get that tat padam. And he is also not going to get yasmad bhuyo na jayate. He will not get into all this life cycle of punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, because he has gotten that paramapada. So if you are Vijnanvan, you will get that Paramapada. If you are not, then you will just be lost in this sansar and you'll keep coming again and again. And that's the gist of these two verses. In the next slide, we see the verses 9th and 10th. And it says, now if your Sarathi is this Vijnanavan, Vijnana Sarathir yastu, Manaha Pragrahavan Naraha. Man should be that Pragrahavan. How can we make our man to be cultivated and controlled? That is the main sadhana that we have to do. Last week we discussed about that. One of the thing is like, and there are many sadhanas that we can do. One is that if I don't talk to myself too much, don't talk to others also a lot, because what happens is when we are too much extroverted, all our sensory things are going outwards, and so we are always lost in that. So if we don't do too many things extrovertednessly, then we are situated in ourselves. So that Vijnanvan person, he puts his mind and intellect under control, and then he gets that Paramapnoti, and he gets the Tarat Vishnu Padam. In the next slide, we see that what is this Vishnu Padam? It is not that he's going somewhere in time or space. He's just this husband is realizing that I am the man. For that, there is no really travel required. So that Vishnu Padam I need to get is just that realization that I am actually a man, because the husband gets all the troubles. Man doesn't get all the trouble. The son or the father gets all the trouble, who doesn't really exist. What exists is just a man. So we need to just realize that. And for that, what is that jnana sadhana? That path has been given in the next few verses, in which we have to go from gross to subtle, from sense organs to sense objects, from sense objects. Those thoughts are just created in our mind. So as we go on forward, these are things are more subtler and subtler. So we need to cultivate our mind, so that first it is all engrossed in the gross things, then slowly and slowly it goes back to subtler and subtler things. So the whole series of things is mentioned, that sense organs are there, then sense objects are more subtle, then mind is more subtle, then individual intellect, my own intellect as compared to the total intellect, the Hiranyagarbha, that is even more subtle. Now, in the next slide, we see what is more subtle than that. From the more subtle than total intellect is the avyakta, unmanifest. So we can go to the next slide. Mahatah paramam avyaktam, avyaktat purushah parah. And what is unmanifest? For example, there is a seed. Do we really see the roots and the branches and the trunk in that? But it is there. It is in that potentiality. So that is the unmanifest. And even superior to that is the Atma. And there is nothing after that. And this Atma is like that light in the hall, in which that helps us to see everything. We cannot see it unless there is some kind of a object there. Similarly, Atma is also so much intermingled with Anatma that you cannot really experience it without having any Anatma around, but it is different than that. So, but for knowing all that, a very subtle intellect is needed, which is what is talked in the 12th verse. It appears to be covered. It cannot be ever covered, but it appears as if it is covered. And that subtle intellect is needed to see that no, it is not covered. It is what pervades everything. Just like when you see the cloth, you don't really see the thread, but there is nothing but the thread in the cloth. So this is the journey this has been told, and for that we have been told that subtle mind is needed, cultivated mind is needed. We need to make sure that our sense organs are in our control, and that will happen over time. So just one last thing is that mind is also a body. Body is gross body, mind is subtle body. Like body needs training. It's like a muscle memory you have to build. Similarly, for mind also, we have to keep training it, keep training it. That's going to happen by repetition. It's not happen in one overnight. So to keep repeating our sadhanas, keep repeating that, slowly our mind will become in control, and then we'll slowly our sense organs will also come in control. And then we'll start on this subtler journey. and soon we'll get to our destination. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Ullas, for an excellent recap of these verses, particularly the Ratha Kalpana portion, which we studied in the last class. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. With today's class, we come to the conclusion of the first chapter of Kathopanishad. If you see, Kathopanishad has got two chapters. The first chapter is the bigger of the two, almost 70 verses. And in the second chapter, we'll have about 50 verses. So technically, we have finished about almost 2/3 of this most important Upanishad, considered one of the direct teaching Upanishads from the Dashopanishad. To quickly recap, it belongs to Krishna Yajurveda. Overall, it has 119 mantras. We have completed, or we will complete, the first chapter. Each chapter has 3 vallis. Like all Upanishad, they begin with a Shanti Pata, and the Shanti Pata for Krishna Yajurveda is the famous Om Sahana Vavatu. The unique thing about Kathopanishad is the teacher. The teacher is somebody which normally everyone fears, Yama Dharmaraja. But here we see him as a Brahma Vidya Acharya. Swamiji says this is like a makeover. The same person whom we normally fear, we now learn to revere. And therefore, our whole outlook to death, when it happens to somebody close to us, when it happens to ourselves, then we don't see it something to be afraid of, but something that we see with great understanding. The importance of Kathopanishad also is that Krishna has borrowed a lot of ideas and many verses directly from this Upanishad in the Bhagavad Gita. To quickly recap, in the first Valli, we had that interesting story of Nachiketa meeting Yamadharmaraja, the 3 boons, and because he asked for Brahma Vidya, which all of us are looking for, Yamadharmaraja puts him into a very stringent examination to see if this little boy has the eligibility for Brahma Vidya or not. In the course of the discussion, Nachiketa brings about the 3 boons that is our goals in life. That means if we have to live a worthy life, we have to fulfill Pitrarina. That means we need to be worthy children of our parents. We need to fulfill Lokarina. That means our life should be a life of contribution. That means I have been able to give more than I have received. And finally, the glory of being a human being is the opportunity to fulfill all Purusharthas, particularly the Parama Purushartha. And by Acharya Rina is our ability to fulfill Parama Purushartha or Moksha in this life itself. The part of the test that Yamadharmaraja subjects Nachiketa, and in the bargain for all of us, is, do I have the eligibility for self-knowledge? Do I have Sat Asat Viveka? Do I know what in my life is permanent and what is impermanent? Do I focus on Anatma, which is impermanent, or do I focus on the Atma, which is permanent? And that is Viveka. What is Vairagya? Anything Anatma, that means my body and all that comes with my body, my family, my possessions, my profession, and all that are perishable commodities, and therefore I don't invest too much mentally on them and do whatever I'm supposed to do. And when I'm very clear about that, this is called Vairagya. Do I have that Tibra Mukshutvam? I want Brahma Vidya and nothing else. I'm not going to be tempted with anything else. And do I have the necessary discipline like sense control, mind control, Shraddha, Samadhana, Titiksha, and so on? With that, we have completed the first Valli. The second Valli is an opportunity where Yamadharmaraja begins to extol the student, where he speaks about the greatness of Brahma Vidya itself, the greatness of the student who is extremely rare, And therefore, we can see all of us are among that rare commodity of people who are interested in Brahma Vidya. And of course, the qualities of a teacher who is a Brahmanishta, and not only one who is anchored in Brahman, who has the ability to communicate this teaching in a manner that we will be able to understand. From the immediately, when Nachiketa puts the question once again, we see those string of verses which talk about Atma Swarupam, like Na Jayate Mriyate Va, all those mantras come in this Upanishad. And then finally, we come to the last Valli. And the predominant teaching there was the Ratha Kalpana, where we have spoken about our own body as a chariot, our horses being the sense organs. And we just heard from Ullas the importance of the driver. Can I put Sri Krishna or my higher self on the driver's seat? And when the higher self is on the driver's seat, then my senses are under control. My mind is under control. My direction is very clear. And this will take us towards Parama Purushartha. And that was the sort of a summary of the first chapter. As today's class, we will conclude the first chapter. I request all of us in our own way to recap chapter 1. And how do we do it? I recommend that we look into the Anubhuti Prakasha of Kathopanishad. What is this Anubhuti Prakasha of Kathopanishad? Let me explain. Now, this is a composition of Sri Vidyaranya Swami. Vidyaranya was his childhood name is Madhava. He was the elder of two exceedingly bright brothers, students of a great teacher called Shankarananda. Both of them were interested in spiritual knowledge, and the younger brother, seeking true knowledge, reached Sringeri, where the great Vidya Shankara Tirtha was the reigning Jagat Guru. Vidyaranya, the older of the two brothers, went in search of his younger brother and happened to reach Sringeri. And there he found him to be the junior pontiff as Bharati Tirtha. Vidya Tirtha initiated Sri Madhava as and gave him a sannyasa diksha as Vidya Aranya. He recognized him, and even at that stage, as Aranya, a forest of what? Vidya or knowledge. He soon went on a pilgrimage to many places in India and finally settled down near Hampi. And when he was in deep meditation, he came across two brothers, Bukkaraya and Harihara, and he empowered them to regain the establish of the Vijayanagara. And that is why for a few generations, the Vijayanagar Empire reigned over South India. He later came back to Sringeri at the demise of his younger brother and became the Jagat Guru from the years 1380 to 1386. He was the junior pontiff from 1333 to 1380 for a long period indeed. This is the Sringeri Mata, where he reigned as the Jagat Guru. Sri Vidyaranya is known for so many compositions, particularly Panchadashi, which Swami Anubhavananda says, if a Christian does not know what Bible is, so too a Hindu should know what Panchadashi is. He gives that much importance for a sincere student of Vedanta that we should know about Panchadashi. And many of us in Param Vedanta have studied his magnum opus in Panchadashi, the 7th chapter, Tripti Deepa Prakaranam. I cannot go through the list of Vidyaranya's works because he has commented on almost everything. All the Vedas he has commented upon. But I would like to focus on what is this Anubhuti Prakasha. Being a phenomenally great teacher, a lot of students would flock to him. And he was under certain restrictions about how he could expose the Vedanta to everybody. And as there were certain traditional restrictions, he brought out the essence of all the Upanishads. All the Upanishads has been condensed in his own brilliant poetic style in what is called the Anubhuti Prakasha. As part of our revision, I would recommend for all students of Param Vedanta to go through the Anubhuti Prakasha. Swami Paramarthananda ji has repeatedly spoken on this, on Anubhuti. His talks are available for us to listen. And of course, in the Arsha Avinash site, all these are also transcribed. So we have his audios, we have the transcripts of his talks. And I would recommend that as we go through, spend some time listening to the Anubhuti Prakasha. What is so great about the Anubhuti Prakasha? In the Anubhuti Prakasha, we have the opportunity of listening to the same Kathopanishad once again, but through the eyes of Vidyaranya Swami. And sometimes he goes even beyond what Adi Shankara's commentaries are. And he gives in some places the importance of chanting the Shanti Pata. Why do we chant the Shanti Pata? Whenever we chant the Shanti Pata, we make a very special prayer. And toward the end, we say Shanti, Shanti, Shanti 3 times. All of us know that this Shanti 3 times is for any obstacles from Adhyatmika, from within me, Shanti. Adi Bhautika, from the world around me, Shanti. Adi Daivika, also Shanti. Vidyaranya, using certain verses from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, goes to explain why the devas might come in the way of our satsang. Whenever we are studying, whenever we are doing any activity, we must anticipate obstacles. And he has said that the devas have a certain vested interest whenever we are doing a spiritual study. And you will study that in the Anubhuti Prakasha, that these obstacles can come in 2 ways. They can obstruct the teacher, they can obstruct the student. The teacher is a jnani, and being a jnani, he is not going to be affected at all. But a teacher may choose not to teach, or the teacher's teaching ability may be affected, and therefore our ability to learn from the teacher can be affected. And so the teacher can be affected in the teaching capacity of the teacher can be affected. From the student angle, it is said that the obstacles can come in two ways. That means our Shraddha in the Guru and the Shastras might come down. Secondly, sometimes students have what is called kutarka, dry logic. Why is this like this? Why, if that why question comes, then you're not able to internalize the teaching. Now, even the devas cannot give obstacles other than from our own prarabdha karma. But then that is why we chant all these Shanti Patas just before a spiritual study to appeal to the devas that right now I'm doing a satsanga, I'm doing some Brahma Vidya work. And during this time, can we have a stay order? That means, can we be able to pursue our studies without any obstacles? I will request Dr. Sanjay Banakal to explain verse 13. Dr. Sanjay, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We are now in the third valli of the first chapter of Kathopanishad. And in this valli, we are concentrating on the journey of our spiritual pursuit. So Rathakalpana is a famous thing that was mentioned in the initial verses, and how the journey should proceed and what is the sadhana that we need to do is further described in the following verses, which we have already seen in the previous classes. Now, verses number 10 and 11 dealt with the Panchakosha Viveka, discrimination of our personality, which has got a 5-layer. And Panchakosha is the Anatma, and Atma, the consciousness, is superior to this Panchakosha. And how to do that? And for that, the teacher, the Yamadharmaraja, says that one needs very subtle intellect. And his intellect, the buddhi, should be so subtle, and also he should be single-pointed towards pursuing this. Such a person alone can attain Brahman. Now, the question is how to attain a subtle mind, which will be described in the present verse, number 13. So the answer is given here in this verse as the meditation is the answer for achieving this subtlety of our mind. Swami Paramarthananda says that this meditation is of two kinds. Meditation done prior to the study of scriptures is known as upasana. It is on the Saguna Ishvara Dhyana. Here, the meditator does not know about Brahman. Hence, he meditates on Saguna Ishvara, the God with attributes. And if a person has done sufficient meditation, his mind becomes so subtle that when he learns the scriptures, he immediately gets liberated. Whereas many people may not be able to go through this, and they would have bypassed and they would have taken to study of the scriptures, which gives us the idea of Brahman. But the Brahman as myself is not possible because the body identification is so strong that I need to get rid of. So now this meditation after completing this scriptural studies is known as Nididhyasana. It is done by the one who has a scriptural study, who has done the scriptural study, that is Shravanam. And this person has an indirect knowledge, that is Paroksha Jnana of Brahman. Such a person has a strong identity with the body and mind, and such a knowledge is of no use. It is not a liberating knowledge. So in this verse number 13, the teacher describes the technique of meditation, that is Nididhyasana, through the practice of which eventually one gets rid of the body identification and identifies himself as the Brahman. This is the direct knowledge or aparoksha jnanam. This alone is the liberating knowledge, and this liberates a person from the bondage of life, that is samsara. Let us look at the verse number 13. Yached vang manasi prajnaha tadyached jnana atmani jnanamatmani mahati niyached tadyached chanta atmani. The discriminative one should resolve speech into the mind into the individual intellect, the individual intellect into the total intellect, and the total intellect ultimately should resolve into the Satchidananda Atma, the tranquil Atma. Let us look at the meaning of each word here. Prajnaha, what does it mean? It means the one who has done the Shravana, a Paroksha Jnani. He knows the scripture studies, he has an idea of Brahman, and this is the indirect knowledge. What should he do? He should sit in an isolated, quiet place and meditate, contemplate. And this process is self-inquiry. How he should conduct this, that has been described in this verse. Yached vang manasi. He should resolve that vang is the walk. Walk represents here all the karmendriyas and jnanendriyas. So the mind is superior to all this karmendriya and jnanendriya. Hence, he should resolve this into the mind, and he should focus on the mind. After some time, he should resolve that mind into the individual intellect, that is the buddhi, which is higher than the mind. Tadyached jnanatmani. Jnanatmani is the intellect here. Niyached jnanatmani mahat. This mind, individual intellect, should be resolved into the total intellect. Here, the total intellect is known as the mahat. The technical word for that is mahat. And this is how one focuses from grosser personality to more and more subtler aspects of one's existence. Next, he should resolve that total mahat into the ultimate, that is the Satchidananda Atma, which is a tranquil Satchidananda Atma, which I own up as my real nature. So now I negate all these Panchakoshas, that is Anatma, and then own up consciousness as my true nature. And this has to be practiced consistently until one gets rid of the body-mind identification. And this will ultimately culminate in acquiring, that is, direct knowledge, the aparoksha jnanam, which is the liberating knowledge. And this alone will give moksha. How long does it take? Is it easy? All this depends on one's commitment, and the next person will describe that. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjay, for a very clear explanation of a very difficult verse, a difficult mantra. Now, remember, we are at the end of the first chapter of the Kathopanishad. The teacher is coming into certain conclusions. And what is the conclusion that we have to get? By now, Brahma Vidya has been given to you. Now, are we going to assimilate that Brahma Vidya? Swamiji repeatedly said it is not the amount of food that you take, that you ingest, makes a difference to you. It is the amount of food that is assimilated. Now we have to make that transition from Brahma Asti, Brahma exists, to Brahma Asmi. And how do we proceed from that? Yached Van Manasi Prajna. There is another mantra you would have heard somewhere else. I had just a little quiz for you to see where this is. Om Vang Me Manasi Pratishtita. Where does this come? It sounds very similar. Mano Me Vacho Pratishtita. This is a Shanti Pata from the Aitareya Upanishad of the Rig Veda. Essentially, it is a difficult mantra, but our teachers have told us few things are very important. That Atma Jnanam requires a very sharp and a very subtle intellect. Many people wrongly think that the mind is not required because there are places where the scriptures say that the mind cannot know. But Adi Shankara and our teachers have said it is the unprepared mind that will not be able to understand. But on the other hand, if you can make your mind sharp and subtle, then it is possible. How do we make our mind sharp and subtle to be able to make this Brahma Vidya from Brahma Asti to Brahma Asmi? And that is the process of meditation. Vedantic students should be very clear. Dr. Sanjay has explained this, but I would like to emphasize this again. Vedantic meditation is of two types. One is called Upasana and the other is called Nididhyasana. Upasana is done in the initial stages when the student comes to the teacher saying, I want Brahma Vidya. And this is the initial stage of making our mind receptive for Brahma Vidya to give us Jnana Yogyata. So the teacher gives you a mantra. It could be, for example, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So you visualize your Ishta Devata and you repeat this mantra any number of times on that Japamala. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Each word is meditated upon. And when your mind is focusing on Saguna Ishvara Dhyanam over a period of time, the mind now becomes receptive for Brahma Vidya. Once you are with the teacher and when the teacher knows you are ready, the teacher gives you the Mahavakya. What is the Mahavakya? The teacher will tell you, Nityoham, Shuddhoham, Buddhoham, Muktoham, Shivoham, Shivaswarupoham. And we need to meditate on that. When I sit by myself and meditate what the teacher says, Nityoham, I am eternal. I know this body is not eternal. I make a disidentification. The body is temporary, but I, the Atma, is Nityaha. I have always been there. Shuddhoham, the body and mind has got so many limitations and impurities, but I am Anaga. I cannot be sullied at all. Nityoham, Shuddhoham, Muktoham. As body-mind, I am tethered in every direction, but as Atma, I am free. Nityoham, Shuddhoham, Muktoham, Buddhoham. I am of the nature of pure knowledge. Shivoham, I am auspicious. Shivaswarupaha. And this meditation over a period of time, without even realizing, something will happen. And what happens? Vidyate hridaya granthi. That knot of avidya, kama, karma goes, and there is an establishment of I am Atma Brahma. The Mahavakyas become. Suddenly, there is an enlightening experience. How does Swamiji talk of this enlightening experience? Remember this experience of hand and light. That means the teacher will show you his hand and say, can you see something in additional to that? And now we know, in addition to the hand, which is nothing to do with the hand, it is the light. Once you know, you see the hand plus light. Whatever I see around, I see so many objects. I take one thing for granted, that all of them I see because they are illumined, that there is light. From the light on those objects, I see them because I have eyes that are functioning. My eyes are able to see because of my mind. My mind is able to see because of Atma or consciousness. That means in every experience, Prati Bodha Viditam Matam. So this great mantra is trying to tell us from Brahma Asti to Brahma Asmi. In every experience, come in touch with the experiencer. Our next speaker will be Mamata Shankar. Mamata, you have to explain a very popular and a famous mantra. Mamata, please.
Gurubhyo Namaha. Chanting the mantra 1.3.14. Uttishtata Jagrata Prapya Varani Bodhata Shurasya Dhara Nishita Duratyaya Durgam Pathastat Kavayo Vadanti. This mantra is a comprehensive one that describes the entire range of spiritual sadhanas. The first stage of the sadhana is identifying the problem. In spiritual practice, we can identify the problem through karma yoga, that is, doing proper actions with proper attitude and accepting every result of action with an attitude of gratitude. Practicing karma yoga as a way of life will help us in knowing what exactly we need. It will purify and sensitize or alert the mind, leading us to analyze whether the problem is with the world or within us. Karma yoga will eventually make it very clear that self-ignorance or ajnanam is the main problem and the mind needs to be strengthened through the knowledge of the self. This point is reiterated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, 15th verse as well, where Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that all beings are suffering due to one problem in the world, that is, ignorance of one's self or self-ignorance. Discovery of the problem as self-ignorance or waking up to our problem is indicated as Uttishtata in the mantra, and time it takes for the discovery varies from person to person. It could take years or decades or several janmas for a few. Once we have understood that the problem is ignorance of oneself, then the next stage is waking up to our own nature or the self, which is ever free, pure, and secure. This is indicated as Jagrata in the mantra, and Gnana Yoga or Gnana Marga is the means to achieve the Jagrata stage. Now the question arises as to how does the knowledge of the self dawn upon us, or how do we wake up to our true nature? Yamadharmaraja says, knowledge never happens. Aging, hunger, death, everything else will happen in time. Knowledge of the self requires putting effort on our part in the form of Prapya Varan Nibodhata, which is in the mantra, which means we need to go to a guru, Varan in the mantra, reverentially and request for the knowledge, Nibodhata in the mantra. In other words, knowledge is gained or has to be transferred by systematic and consistent teaching of the scriptures under a competent guru for a length of time, that is Shravanam and Mananam, listening and doubt-free conviction of the knowledge of the self respectively. Transfer of knowledge through shortcuts like touching or siddhis is not possible. Fact That Yama teaches Nachiketas about self-knowledge systematically indicates that knowledge involves systematic teaching through a guru until the student understands the teaching, that is, Aham Brahmasmi. Yama goes on to say, Kavayo Vadanti, which means wise people declare that going through this Jnana Marga or Pataha in the mantra is very durgam, that is difficult. Yama compares Jnanamarga to sharpened razor's edge and says, Shurasya Nishita Dhara Duratyaya. Shurasya means razor, Nishita Dhara means a sharpened edge of the razor. That is, just as it is extremely difficult to walk or tread Duratyaya in the mantra through the sharpened razor's edge, similarly, Jnanamarga also is extremely difficult. However, Jnana Marga cannot be avoided. Jnanad eva kaivalyam. Jnana Marga alone leads to ultimate reality, that is moksha or liberation. Swamiji says Jnana Marga can be made easier, however, by preparing our personality or our mind. We prepare through acquiring sadhana chatushchaya sampatti qualification, that is the 4 Ds: discrimination, dispassion, sixfold discipline, and desire for liberation, which can be achieved by karma yoga and upasana yoga. Karma yoga helps in acquiring the 3 Ds, that is discrimination, desire for liberation, and dispassion, while upasana yoga helps to acquire the sixfold disciplines. In the last slide, in conclusion, we follow Karma Yoga for discovery of the problem of self-ignorance. Then we follow Gnana Yoga or Gnana Marga for knowledge of the self. And this Gnana Yoga or the Marga is not an easy ride. We can make it easy and a pleasant ride with better preparation of the mind through Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga. In other words, through the qualifications acquired by being sadhana chatushchaya sampanna. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Mamta. Although you have given a very clear explanation of this very famous mantra, which has been popularized by Swami Vivekananda, at the risk of being repetitious, I would like to say a few things which have impressed me greatly about this particular mantra and why this mantra is considered so important. Swamiji says there is one mantra in the Kathopanishad which we quote so many times, Pariksha Lokan Karmachitan Brahmana. This mantra is like that, as significant, as complete as that. And that is why Swami Vivekananda has used this mantra as a wake-up call. Those who have been exposed to the Upanishads and to such mantras, they use this, remember that famous phrase, awake, arise, stop not until your goal is won. What is our goal? We are here for Tibra Mumukshutva. I want that and nothing else. That Uttishtata, stand up, Jagrata, wake up, Prapya Varan, go towards the teacher, Nibodhata, ask for this knowledge. Why is this process so important? Shurasya Dhara, there is a very beautiful description that the spiritual journey is a very difficult path. It is like walking on the edge of a razor. Durgam, Gama means to go. Durgama means very difficult. This path is extremely difficult. Who says that? Wise people. Kavayoho vadanti. The wise people say. Now, all of us have been in a spiritual journey. And I want you to see those initial days when you were initiated into the spiritual and path and how you came into this path. In the early stages, we have a tendency to blame everybody else for our problem. But the moment we are initiated into Karma Yoga, that is Ishvara Arpana Bhava, Ishvara Prasada Bhava, slowly and slowly we realize that I stop blaming others for problems in my life. I realize I am the problem, I am the solution. I realize that the Mula Avidya or ignorance of my true nature is the cause of all the problems in my life. Then I come to a teacher and the teacher gives you Brahma Asti. The teacher helps you to realize that Brahman exists and Brahman is none other than my true nature. And this process is like waking up from a bad dream, from being in a nightmare, and suddenly you wake up, the nightmare is over. Because now you anchor onto your higher self. And whatever your experiences had been, it is not going to affect you at all. Many things happen in your life. The body becomes older, the hair becomes gray. So many things happen by themselves, but knowledge does not happen by itself. We have to put a certain effort to get spiritual knowledge. That is why uh, we have to approach a teacher, a proper teacher, and ask for this knowledge. And as this knowledge is extremely difficult, we need to have various eligibility processes that I have particular qualifications. And then what is difficult now becomes easy through various sadhanas. Our next speaker will be Srimati Vidya Prabhu. Vidya, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Ashabdam Asparsham Arupam Avyayam Tatharasam Nityam Agandhavachayat Anadyanantam Mahatah Param Dhruvam Nichayatan Mrityumukhat Pramuchyate. This is the most important verse of not only the entire Kathopanishad, but of the whole of the Upanishadic literature. Here, the definition of Brahman and Atman or Atman is given. The verse specifies that Brahman cannot be objectified. Brahma, Anubhava or experience is not possible because as it is mentioned in the verse, it is Ashabdam, Asparsham, Arupam, Arasam, Agandhavat. These 5 words together mean Brahman is free from 5 properties of sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, which means Brahman is not available for sensory perception. Next slide, Doctor. Brahma Darshanam is not possible because it is Anadi, without birth, Anantam, without death, Avyayam, without the intermediary modifications. While joining these 3 words, it means that Shadvikara Rahitam. Brahman is free from 6-fold modifications like Asti, potential existence, Ajayate, birth, Vardhate, growth, Viparinamate, transformation, Apakshiyate, decay, and Nashaha, death. Therefore, only Dhruvam, meaning absolute. Desha Kala Atitam. Nityam means eternal because it is free from time-wise limitation. Next slide, Doctor. Whatever we see around us has got Shabdam, Rupam, Rasa, Gandha, which is experienced through 5 sense organs, which reveal only these 5-fold properties. The 5 sense organs cannot objectify if all these 5 properties are not there. This means the entire external world is not Brahman because it is either Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. Then can we take the internal experiences like some visions during the intense meditations or some vague forms or some kind of mystic experiences as Brahman? No, this cannot be because they're all arriving and departing, whereas Brahman is defined as something which does not arise and depart. Then, when it is neither inside or outside, the question is it there? The teacher says it is. You are Brahman. I, the experiencer of everything, am Brahman. It is ever the experiencer, never the experienced. Next slide, Doctor. It is ever the seer, never the seen, ever the hearer, never the heard. It is available only for owning up as I am Brahman, never for objectification. Nichaya, meaning having known. I am Brahman in the manner of Atma Bhavena. Then what will happen? Mrityu Mukhat Pramuchyate. Thereafter, one will be freed from the grip of Kala Tattvam or from the hold of Yamadharma Raja. Lord Yamadharma Raja himself is telling us here that if one gains self-knowledge, even Yamadharma Raja, the Lord of Death, cannot touch you, meaning one will be immortal. We have to understand here that when our nature is immortal, there is no question of becoming immortal. One will be free from the notion that I am mortal. Therefore, Mrityu Mukhat, from the mouth of Mrityu, Pramuchyate Jivan Mukta Bhavati. Next slide, Doctor. Mahataha Param. Mahataha standing for Hiranyagarbha, the Samashti intellect. The word Mahat has been dealt in detail in verse 11, where it says that the unmanifest is superior to the Mahat. Here, unmanifest refers to the Karana Prapancha. Atma is superior to the unmanifest, then there is nothing superior to Atma. That is the culmination, that is the supreme goal. This Brahman is soundless, ashabdam, touchless, asparsham, colorless or formless, arupam, tasteless, arasam, smellless, agandha, beginningless, anadi, endless, anantam, decayless, avyayam, deathless, changeless, and beyond Mahat. Having clearly known that Brahman, one is totally freed from the jaws of death. Next slide, Doctor. This verse is similar to the 6th verse of Mundakopanishad. Yattadadreshya agrahya magotra mavarnam chakshu shrotram tadapani padam nityam vibhum sarvagatam sukshmam tadavyayam yadbhuta yonim paripashyayanti dhiraha. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Vidya, for a very nice explanation of another very difficult verse. And as you said, certainly not only an important verse from Kathopanishad, from the entire Upanishadic literature. You will remember there is one verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Ya Nisha Sarva Bhutanam, the day-night experience. For all of us, this world is real, and Brahman we don't see at all. Why we don't see Brahman at all? Because Brahman is a Shabda, a Sparsha, that it has got no gunas at all. And because my sense organs can perceive only gunas, I don't see Brahman around. And then there are so many things happening in my mind. I'm also told whatever comes and goes, whatever is Anitya is not Brahman. So whatever I see in my mind is also not true. So therefore, all my experiences are those things which come and go, or which I can see with my sense organs, and things which undergo certain modifications. And therefore, we have a feeling that Brahman does not exist at all. Remember the first enlightening experience I told. Any object that I see is possible because there is light on that object. And from that light on that object, I move to my eyes, to my sense organs, to my mind, and then I become aware of that conscious principle. What is that conscious principle? That conscious principle in all of us. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. That experiencer in all of us is Brahman. If I am established in that Brahman, the great Lord of Death and our Acharya tells us, if you know yourself in this manner, you will be free from me. We heard in the Bhajagovinda, Bhagavad Gita, Kinchida Dita. Then finally, Yamenana Charcha. If you have understood Vedanta, you are out of the grip of Yamadharmaraja, as Sri Vidya Prabhu said, that we are not going to become immortal. Our very nature is immortal. And it is just the identification with that conscious principle and to be able to claim Aham Brahma Asmi. The next speaker is Srimati Rama Gopalakrishna. Ramaji, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Kathopanishad Mantra 1.3.16. Nachiketam upakhyanam mrityuproktam sanatanam uktva shrutva cha medhavi brahmaloke mahiyate. Translation. The wise man who has heard and related the eternal anecdote of Nachiketa receiving self-knowledge, narrated by Yamadharmaraja, the death is adored in the world of Brahman. Anvayarthaha, Shrutva, hearing from preceptors, cha, and Muktva, relating to Brahman. Sanatanam, that is eternal. Nachiketam, that was received by Nachiketa. And it is also the Upakhyanam, anecdote. Mrityu Proktam, narrated by death. Medhavi, the wise man. Brahmaloke, in the region of Brahman. Mahiyate, will be glorified, being one with Brahman. In the next slide, we see the meaning of the word Upakhyanam. The word Upakhyanam could be translated in two ways. Upakhyanam meaning story, and in this case, Nachiketam becomes an adjective to the story, that is, the story of Nachiketa, identifying the name of the story. The alternative meaning for Upakhyanam is knowledge, that specific knowledge which was imparted to Nachiketas by the Lord Yamaraja, or the knowledge that is named after him as Nachiketam Upakhyanam. Further, Yamaraja glorifies this knowledge of story contained in the three vallis of first chapter as Sanatanam, that is eternal because it is Vedic. The Upanishad is quoting the story or knowledge which is older than the Upanishad itself and which is relevant even for the days to come. By this glorification, he is ultimately glorifying the Vedas. It is also glorified by associating it with an intelligent young seeker and an efficient teacher. In one of the earlier mantras, Yamaraja praises the teacher and the taught, which he says, Ascharyo Vakta Kushalo Asya Labdha, meaning rare indeed is the experiencer of the Atma, taught by an able preceptor. Here, Yamaraja says, both the teacher and the taught are benefited eventually. How? It is detailed in the next slide. Uktva, by imparting this knowledge, the guru will be benefited. Sutvacha, and by listening to this teaching from the preceptor, the student will get the knowledge. Shrutva indicates Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam also. Thus, either by imparting or receiving, Medhavi, an enlightened seeker, or a discriminative seeker, as he chose to listen to this knowledge. A sadhana chatushtaya sampanna adhikari, what he gets, he is brahmaloke mahiyate. He is glorified as he discerns the self in the abode of Brahmaji. Here, Brahmaloka has two meanings. If the dialogue is a successful interaction, then the benefit is Gnanam and Moksha straight away. He becomes one with the Parabrahman and immediate liberation will be gained. He is freed from the noose of avidya, kama, karma, that is ignorance, desire, and action. And it is called Jivan Muktihi. Therefore, Brahmaloke is Brahmani, that is in Parabrahman. Here, Brahma eva lokaha, that is Brahma itself is the loka. Mahiyate, that is he realizes his infinite nature and glorified in the Brahmaloka. Suppose the speaker could not successfully gain the knowledge, then the mere Shravanam, that is including Mananam and Nididhyasanam, will produce sufficient punyam and he will reach Brahmaloka. There, Brahmaji, that is Chaturmukha Brahma, will impart knowledge and the Adhikari will attain Krama Muktihi. Either way, Tat Padam or Moksha is guaranteed. Thus, this Shruti extols the knowledge, the teacher, and the taught. The same idea is further repeated in the 17th mantra with Phalashruti mantras 16 and 17. Yamadharmaraja wraps up the first stage of teaching, which talks about twofold benefits of listening and narrating the three vallis of first chapter of Kathopanishad to others. Thank you. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you very much, Ramaji. Another brilliant presentation. Every word clearly explained with very beautiful slides. What is the greatness of the first chapter of the Kathopanishad, Yamadharmaraja? It is actually the Upanishad which has come over now. The teacher and the student have gone to the backstage. The Upanishad now is glorifying what is this we have heard. I remember, when Sanjaya takes over toward the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Sanjaya feels so ecstatic. I heard something so wonderful between Krishna and Arjuna, and he says, I cannot describe how my body feels. Now, this is how the Upanishad is describing the learning that has happened between the great teacher Yamadharmaraja and the most wonderful student Nachiketa. And that's why the Upanishad says, I want you to keep listening to this again and again. Not only listening to this, see how you can teach this, or even if you cannot teach this, just the Shravanam of this is going to be very powerful. He declares that Nachiketa has got Brahma Vidya, and therefore, once you have got this knowledge, there is two forms of benefits. Either you become a Jivan Mukta, that means you become one with Brahman while you are alive, or you proceed to Brahma Loka. And in Brahma Loka, what happens is you will get an opportunity to get Brahma Vidya from Brahmaji himself, and this is called Karamamukti. We come to the final verse, which, as Ramaji also mentioned, is talking about the Palashruti, is the benefit which will be spoken to us by Nilima. Nilima, please.
Ya imam paramam guhyam shravayet brahma samsadi prayata shrata kaleva tad anantyaya kalpate tada anantyaya kalpata iti. Meaning, if a person repeats with purity this supreme secret in the assembly of Brahmins or at the time of Shraddha, that conduces to the infinite result. It certainly conduces to infinite result. A special credit is given to this verse. The idea from the last verse is repeated here. The Upanishad is giving the phalam. This knowledge is so subtle, so sacred, supreme. If a person narrates or chants, especially during Shraddha, even if the person doesn't know the meaning or the philosophy behind it, even Parayanam also is very beneficial. When a seeker reads or chants this first chapter, which is a supreme secret to an assembly of Astika people, Brahmanas, with physical and mental purity, he will attain the infinite moksha. It must be understood that mere reading will not give moksha directly, but in a due course, the seeker will develop interest in learning the meaning, get jnana, and then moksha. Due to absence of this knowledge, people are unnecessarily afraid of death at present. When this knowledge is received by more people, then they are less likely to meet death fearfully. The repetition of Anantyaya Kalpate indicates certainly one reaches to moksha. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you very much, Nilima, for another very clear explanation of this concluding mantra from the first chapter of the Kathopanishad. And when you say kalpate iti, so whenever when the word iti comes and when there is a repetition, it means we have come to the conclusion. And the Upanishad is now giving the benefit. Just simple parayanam, even if you do not know the meaning, if you are able to chant this first chapter, it is said it is going to be very beneficial. In the Buddhist literature, there is a story of how a person who was a very common business person in a marketplace, he was going in the market. From inside somebody's house, he could hear the chanting of the Diamond Sutra of It is a Buddhist sutra called Vajra Chetika Prajna Paramitaka Sutra, or the Diamond Sutra. Just listening to it, he became transfixed. He stopped. His mind stopped. Everything stopped. And this went on and on. He went for not minutes, for hours, he remained. The marketplace closed, everything shut down. But just listening to the words of the Diamond Sutra, we have one enlightened teacher in the Buddhist school. And because he got transformed, he could not transform other people. He was a different kind of a teacher because he could not teach, but he himself was transformed. And this is proof to say, just by listening to these verses. As part of our revision, I have requested our Sanskrit teacher, Mahoday Raja Reddy sir, to recap the whole Kathopanishad with the Anubhuti Prakasha, which will be premiered in our YouTube channel. And you will have an opportunity twice a week to listen to these classes where a person with good Sanskrit knowledge is going to chant these verses from the Kathopanishad. So listening to the verses of the Kathopanishad and to be able to see what Vidyaranya Swami has to say about each of these will be a great experience. The final mantra says that during the Shraddh ceremony, it is recommended during that time to do a parayanam, to do a chanting of the first chapter of the Kathopanishad. We have attended many death ceremonies, those 13th day ceremony. We have an auditorium full of people. Sometimes it is very well organized. Sometimes you have to wait for almost 1 hour. Nothing really happens. People can't keep quiet for a long time. And after that, there will be each one speaking to each other, and then the volume becomes louder and louder, and a big cacophony is going on in a very sacred ceremony where actually nothing else is happening. People are just waiting, and it is recommended. Now, those of us who have understood, if you have a certain leadership ability, to be able to bring in the story of Yama and Nachiketa and to bring the significance in these moments. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Radha, please.
Thank you, Hegde sir, and all speakers of the day for a wonderful session. Thank you all, friends, for your active participation in this divine journey. On coming Monday, 12th Feb 2024, let us tune in for gift session 13. Now it's time to conclude the session. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnabadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.